So it's time to elevate your design. I've seen so many designs created by AI, and it looks like the most generic things. And so, as someone who has created over 400 designs just from Aura alone, and you can see the breadth of the variety of the UI that I'm generating, I have so many tips for you. And we're going to go really deep into some of these tips, such as remixing, for example. And we're also going to be learning about the new design mode where you can edit the visual styles, the backgrounds, the gradients, and a lot of stuff that you can do. Then we're going to look into the resources, such as this amazing library called React Bits that has incredible particles and iridescence lights and stuff like that. We're going to look at different resources for UIs that can inspire for your next vibe coding project. And also animations using shaders, which is what Apple use a lot in their, latest iPhone, for example, when you use Siri. We're also going to learn about a little bit of coding, just enough to make you dangerous. So what I mean by that? Well, HTML, right? Everyone should know HTML. And so we have Tailwind, which is the next generation of HTML. And you have a color system. And it's just to be familiar with that. So, we have the prompt builder that we've covered before. So if you haven't watched that video, you should definitely watch that before this. But now we're going to get into the nitty gritty and we're going to learn about spacing, about colors. And also for those who wants to have more control, they can export the design to Figma. And then we can also bring the design to, coding apps such as Cursor or Lovable. All right, let's start with remixing, which is one of the most powerful things you can do. All of these platforms, such as Aura and Lovable and V0, they have these templates, if you will, where you can essentially fork it or remix it. Sure, I would say some platforms have better choices than others. I would say Aura is definitely more focused on design, and that's what you want. You want to focus and vibe the styling, because once you have something, right? Once you have a style set in place, whether it's just a card or a little UI for your login, this is enough information for AI to take over. And if you ask another page or another component, it's going to do it perfectly because it has that context is going to be consistent with the UI. So the first thing that you want to do is to go to, for example, the browse page. And here you want to find a UI that you really like, right? And there's just so many of them. We have, beautiful landing pages and hero section. We also have, if you go to trending, for example, which is more recent. So if you come back to Aura, and thank you for that, you basically can see new designs every single week, every single day. So trending is, within the last, 2-3 days, and the last week, for example, this one is really cool. And it has this beautiful shader in the background where it has, comets. And so you want to start with that, right? So for example, here, I'm going to remix this and I'm going to say adapt for a, portfolio, right? And then press enter, and it's just one prompt. And the thing that you want is to kind of like have as much context as possible so that you make as little mistakes. So the rule that I like to use is, 90% AI and 10% human. And the 10% is essentially just finding your taste, your vibe, right? And editing the last bit. So for example, the naming, the content. So here it's taking a little bit more time to show the preview. That's because it was focusing on the shader background first, right? And now it's generating using a live preview is generating the content, which is live. So as you can see here, it's focusing on the HTML. So you can see It's creating a portfolio landing page for Alex, and it doesn't have to be complete. And it's also based on a remix design, which means that it's going to respect sort of like the structure and the design of it. And it's doing a really good job. Now that you have your design, what do you do with it? You can, if you're not happy with it, you can find another template, another remix. And by the way, this is not the only way you can copy the HTML from any project as long as it provides the code. So for example, when you open any of these templates, you're going to be able to see the code and you can remix it. So you can just use that as a template. And AI does a pretty good job, even if it's a different language, like React, for example, and converting it to HTML, it's going to do a good job. You can keep prompting it. So, for example, if you want, to add a footer, or you want to, you don't like this, you don't like that there's 3 cars instead of 2, you can keep prompting, and you can also do one thing that I love to do, which is to give a little bit more context to the style, if especially if I start from scratch. So for example, a lot of people have trouble with starting from scratch, and let me tell you one secret here, which is you need to have the most context in the least amount of words possible. And the secret for me is to give context on my favorite site, like a reference site. Yes, we have the remix, but we can also, for example, create a portfolio in the style of your favorite site. And here, by the way, you're not stealing anything. AI does a really good job of kind of like giving reference. So for example, you can mention Apple, you can mention Vercel, you can mention Linear, even like apps like React Bits, maybe it's going to have a pretty good time thinking about. So, I like Linear because it gives. So the reason why I like Linear is because it's very specific as a style that I'm looking for, and AI is consistently very good at that. So, you can say something like create a portfolio in the style of Linear. Again, it can be any of your favorite site. And you're going to be experimenting with these. And depending on the industry, you're going to be referencing Apple, you're going to be referencing, Faye, or, a lot of these amazing websites. And you can see when you do that, and also Chatcien, which is very popular. And you can see as you do that, it already knows as a context, and it looks almost nothing like Linear in a way, but it does have context on sort of the minimalism and the typography and the the fonts that it's using and the spacing rules and kind of like a design system, if you will. And that's enough for you to get started on. And again, you can see it's very clean. And it's a lot better than if you just do it without referencing a style or referencing a website. So to me, that is one of the most important key. And at this point, you want to, to edit it, or you can say something like, I want in dark mode, and then you can keep prompting it and making it better. So this is the dark mode version, and what is funny about this, to be honest, this is a little bit of a side note, is that Linear, used to be very, very popular with this style of kind of like dark blue. And whenever you reference Linear in sort of like dark mode, it's going to use the old style of Linear. So if you look at the new style, which by the way is one of my favorite websites, and a lot of designers love this as a reference when they talk about good design. So they're doing something really special here, which is why, even if you do client work, if you talk to other designers and you reference some of these really well-designed apps, they're going to reference Linear a lot, or Apple a lot, right? They're like the shining example, and Stripe as well. So they're a shining example, and it's also good for AI to take these as sort of like a reference point. As you can see here, I'm pretty happy with this design. I look at this, I'm like, well, yeah, I can absolutely use this. I just need to fix, my name. I just need to maybe add a little bit of a cool animation, so which is where shader is going to come from, and animations.